The mimosas hadn't even arrived when my mother leaned back in her chair at Café Meridian, gestured toward the window overlooking the Pearl District skyline, and announced to the entire table that my apartment would be perfect for her new start. Not asked. Announced. Like she was claiming a parking spot. My boyfriend Marcus went still beside me, his hand freezing mid-reach for his water glass. My best friend Mia's fork clattered against her plate. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. But Mom just smiled that bright, determined smile I'd learned to fear and said the renovations I'd done would save her so much trouble since she was planning to move in by the 1st of next month. That was 3 weeks ago. Now I'm sitting in a real estate attorney's office with a file folder thick enough to stop a door, and my mother is about to learn that entitlement isn't the same thing as ownership. My name is Riley Matthews, and the apartment my grandmother left me wasn't just a home. It turned out to be the battlefield where I'd finally stop letting my mother rewrite reality to suit her needs. 3 years ago, I bought my loft in the Foundry building with money my grandmother Ruth had left me. Not my mother's mother. My father's mother. The grandmother who'd actually shown up to my college graduation, who'd taught me how to budget and save, who believed I could build something solid and lasting. She'd left me $150,000 with a handwritten note tucked into the will that said use this to build your foundation, not to fix someone else's cracks. I'd cried reading those words because she'd known. Somehow she'd known exactly what my mother would expect me to do with that inheritance. The apartment had needed work when I bought it. Water damage in the bathroom, outdated electrical, floors that looked like they'd survived a small war. I'd spent 6 months doing renovations mostly myself, learning to tile and paint and install fixtures through YouTube videos and sheer stubborn determination. Marcus had helped on weekends. Mia had painted an entire accent wall in exchange for pizza and beer. My younger brother Kyle had installed the kitchen backsplash during his spring break. Every surface held a memory of the work I'd put into making it mine. Mom had visited exactly once during those 6 months, walked through while I was covered in drywall dust, and said it seemed like a lot of effort for such a small space. Then she'd asked if I had any cash she could borrow until her next paycheck. That should have been my warning. That casual question, asked while I stood exhausted in the home I was building with my own hands, expecting me to just hand over money like I always had before. But I was still operating under the old rules back then. The rules that said family helps family, that said Mom was going through a hard time, that said making her uncomfortable was worse than my own discomfort. I gave her $200 that day. She never paid it back. She never mentioned it again. And when I finished the renovations and invited her to see the completed apartment, she'd been too busy to come. Until that brunch 3 weeks ago when suddenly my home became very interesting to her. The champagne brunch had been her idea. A celebration, she'd said. She had news to share. I'd thought maybe she'd gotten a promotion at the medical supply company where she worked in billing. Or maybe she and Greg were finally getting married after 5 years of dating. Instead, she'd ordered the most expensive items on the menu, waited until everyone had their drinks, and dropped her announcement like confetti at a parade she expected us all to celebrate. My lease is up at the end of the month, Mom had said, reaching across the table to squeeze my hand like we were co-conspirators in some exciting plan. And Greg and I have been talking about downsizing anyway. Your place is absolutely perfect for us. You've done such beautiful work with it, honey. Really, you should be proud. I just stared at her, my brain struggling to process what I was hearing. Mia recovered first. Wait, are you asking Riley if you can rent her apartment? Mom laughed, that tinkling sound she used when she wanted to seem delighted rather than dismissive. Oh no, not rent. That would be silly. I'm her mother. Besides, that building allows family transfers, doesn't it? I looked up the rules online. Riley can just sign it over, and we'll handle the mortgage payments going forward. It makes so much more sense than me scrambling for a new rental. There is no mortgage, I heard myself say. I own it outright. Even better, Greg spoke up from beside her, his voice carrying that smooth reasonableness he used when selling people things they didn't want. Then there's no complicated refinancing to deal with. Just a simple quit-claim deed and Diane can take over the HOA fees and utilities. We'd obviously update everything to make it official. The restaurant noise seemed to fade into a dull roar. Marcus's hand found mine under the table, gripping tight. Mia had gone completely still, her eyes narrowed in that dangerous way that meant she was calculating exactly how much damage she wanted to do with her words. "Mom," I said carefully, "I'm not giving you my apartment." Her smile didn't falter. "Don't be dramatic, sweetheart. I'm not asking you to give me anything. This is just common sense. You've been talking about maybe moving in with Marcus eventually anyway. And honestly, at your age, you should be thinking about a house with a yard, not some trendy loft. This way the apartment stays in the family, and I'm not throwing money away on rent anymore." Greg nodded along like this was the most logical thing he'd ever heard. "Your mother's been under a lot of financial stress. This would really help her get back on her feet. You want to help your mom, don't you?" I felt the familiar weight of that question. The same question that had gotten me to co-sign for her car 6 years ago when she swore she just needed someone with better credit to get approved. The same question that had convinced me to loan her $5,000 for emergency dental work that I later found out had actually gone toward a vacation with Greg. The same question that had been used to extract money, time, favors, and guilt from me for as long as I could remember. But this time, something was different. Maybe it was the casual way she'd announced her plans without even pretending to ask first. Maybe it was the 6 months of physical labor I'd put into that apartment, every tile I'd laid and wall I'd painted. Maybe it was just that I'd finally had enough. "No," I said. The word came out stronger than I'd expected. Mom's expression flickered, confusion crossing her face like I'd spoken a language she didn't understand. "No what?" "No, I'm not signing over my apartment. It's not happening. I bought it with Grandma Ruth's inheritance. It's mine. I worked on it for months. And I'm not giving it to you just because your lease is ending and you don't want to apartment hunt." The temperature at the table dropped about 20 degrees. Greg's jaw tightened. Mom's hand withdrew from mine, her smile finally cracking around the edges. "Riley," she said, and her voice had taken on that hurt tone that usually made me backtrack immediately. "I can't believe you're being so selfish about this. After everything I've done for you. Everything you've done for me." The words burst out before I could stop them. "Mom, you forgot my birthday 3 years running. You borrowed my car and returned it on empty with a broken taillight you never mentioned. You've asked me for money at least once a month for the past 5 years. What exactly have you done for me that means I owe you my home?" Her face flushed red. "I raised you, didn't I? Kept a roof over your head? You think that was easy? Being a single mother? And this is how you repay me, by throwing my struggles in my face?" Marcus cleared his throat. "Mrs. Matthews, Riley isn't obligated to give you her property just because no one asked you," Greg cut him off. "This is a family matter. Maybe you should let Riley and her mother work this out privately." Mia's laugh was sharp enough to cut glass. "Oh, this is rich. You want privacy now? After announcing your plans to steal your daughter's apartment in the middle of a crowded restaurant?" "I'm not stealing anything," Mom snapped. "I'm trying to help both of us. Riley's wasting that space living there alone. She doesn't need 2 bedrooms. And frankly, she owes me. I wiped her nose and changed her diapers and worked 2 jobs to feed her. The least she can do is help me out now when I need it." The guilt was automatic, rising like bile in my throat. Years of training told me to apologize, to smooth things over, to make Mom feel better even when she was demanding something unreasonable. But then I caught Mia's eye across the table, and I remembered every conversation we'd had about my mother. Every time Mia had pointed out that normal parents don't keep detailed ledgers of everything they've done for their children. Every time she'd asked me why I felt responsible for fixing problems my mother had created for herself. I stood up, my legs shaking but holding steady. "I need to go." "Riley, sit down," Mom commanded. "We're not done discussing this." "Yes, we are." I pulled out my wallet, threw cash on the table for my uneaten meal. There's nothing to discuss. The apartment is mine. It's staying mine. And you need to find somewhere else to live. I left before she could respond, Marcus and Mia scrambling to follow. Behind us, I heard Greg's voice, low and angry, and my mother's rising in that particular pitch that meant she was gearing up for a scene. But I kept walking through the restaurant, past the curious stares of other brunchgoers, out into the bright Portland morning where I could finally breathe. That was when Mia said the words that changed everything. You know she's not going to let this go, right? She's going to try something. We need to get ahead of whatever she's planning. Marcus agreed immediately. You should talk to a lawyer. Like, today. Make sure all your paperwork is airtight. I thought about my mother's smile when she'd announced her plans. The confidence in her voice, like my agreement, was a formality rather than a requirement. The way Greg had jumped in with talk of quit-claim deeds and family transfers like they'd rehearsed this conversation. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel, it means a lot to us. Now back to the story. And I realized Mia was right. This wasn't over. This was just beginning. Monday morning I took a personal day from my job at the software company and went straight to the Multnomah County Records office. If Mom was serious about trying to take my apartment, I needed to know exactly what legal protections I had. The clerk who helped me was a woman in her 60s named Beverly who had the patient demeanor of someone who'd seen every kind of property dispute imaginable. She pulled up my deed without comment, printed copies, and then paused when she saw something on her screen. Has anyone requested copies of this deed recently? She asked. Her tone was carefully neutral, but something in her expression made my stomach drop. I don't know. Can you tell me if they have? She adjusted her glasses and leaned closer to the monitor. There was a request filed Friday afternoon. Diane Matthews. Same last name as you. That's my mother. Did she get copies? Beverly nodded slowly. Public record. Anyone can request them. But she also submitted something else. A notarized affidavit claiming she provided substantial financial contribution to the purchase and requesting her name be added to the deed as a co-owner. The floor seemed to tilt under my feet. She what? It was denied, of course, Beverly said quickly. You can't just add yourself to someone else's property with an affidavit. But the request is in the system now. And she's claiming she gave you $75,000 toward the down payment. My hands clenched on the edge of the counter. She didn't give me anything. I bought it with my inheritance. Do you have documentation proving that? Bank statements showing the source of funds? I do. Everything went through my personal account. My grandmother's estate attorney handled the inheritance transfer. I can get all of it. Good. Beverly made notes on a pad. Because your mother also filed for a copy of the building's HOA rules, specifically the sections about family transfers and cohabitation rights. She's doing research. Building a case. The woman met my eyes with a look of weary sympathy. Honey, I've worked here 23 years. I've seen this before. Family members who think they can talk their way into property ownership. Sometimes they try forgery. Sometimes they try to establish residency and claim tenant rights. You need to protect yourself right now, today, before this goes any further. I left the records office with a folder full of documents and a recommendation for a real estate attorney named Laura Brennan who apparently specialized in family property disputes. By noon I was sitting in her downtown office, a sleek space with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Willamette River. Laura Brennan was exactly the kind of lawyer I needed. Sharp-eyed, no nonsense, with the kind of direct manner that suggested she didn't waste time on pleasantries when there was work to do. She listened to my story without interrupting, taking notes in neat handwriting while I explained the Brunch confrontation and the county records revelation. When I finished, she sat back and tapped her pen against her legal pad. Your mother is planning something systematic. The affidavit claiming financial contribution, the HOA research, these aren't random actions. She's building a narrative. What kind of narrative? That she has an ownership stake in your apartment. That she's entitled to live there or force a sale and split the proceeds. Possibly that you defrauded her somehow by taking property that rightfully belonged to her. Laura pulled out a fresh legal pad. Let's start with documentation. I need your grandmother's will, the inheritance distribution records, all bank statements showing the apartment purchase, receipts for renovations, and any communication you have with your mother about the property. I pulled out my phone and started scrolling through text messages. There were dozens from just the past week. Mom asking when I'd be home so we could discuss the transition. Greg texting about hiring movers. A message from Mom listing furniture she planned to bring. Another asking for my building manager's contact information so she could introduce herself. Laura's expression grew grimmer with each screenshot I showed her. She's already treating this as a done deal. Acting like she has rights to the property. This is good evidence of her intent, but it also means she's probably going to escalate when she realizes you're not cooperating. What kind of escalation? Laura's pause was meaningful. Does your mother have a key to your apartment? The question hit me like ice water. Yes. I'd given her a spare key 2 years ago when I went on vacation, just in case something happened and someone needed to get in. She was supposed to give it back but never did, and I'd never pushed the issue because I figured what was the harm. Change your locks immediately, Laura said. Today if possible. And I want you to document the current state of your apartment thoroughly. Photos of every room, every angle, dated and time-stamped. If she tries to move in and establish residency, we need proof of what was there before she showed up. She can't just move in without my permission. That's breaking and entering. Technically it's trespassing if you've told her she's not welcome, but if she has a key and claims you gave her permission to be there, it becomes much murkier. Laura pulled up something on her computer. Oregon has complicated tenant laws. If she gets mail delivered there, stays for a certain number of days, she could argue she's established residency. Then you'd have to formally evict her, which takes months. My phone buzzed. A text from Kyle, my younger brother. Mom is freaking out. Says you embarrassed her at brunch and now you're not answering her calls. She wants me to talk to you. I showed the message to Laura. Is your brother likely to side with your mother? I don't know. He's always been caught in the middle. Mom leans on him when she can't get to me. Laura made another note. You need to talk to him privately. Make sure he understands what's really happening before your mother spins this her way. Family members often become unwitting accomplices in property disputes because they only hear one side. I left Laura's office with a clear action plan and a retainer agreement that made my bank account wince. But it felt worth it. For the first time since that disastrous brunch, I had someone on my side who actually knew how to fight this kind of battle. Mia met me at a locksmith shop in the Pearl District that afternoon. The owner, a gruff man named Pete, promised he could come to my building within 2 hours to change all the locks. While we waited, Mia helped me photograph every inch of my apartment. We documented the furniture arrangement, the art on the walls, the contents of closets and drawers. Everything that proved this was my established home, not some empty space waiting for my mother to claim it. You know what this reminds me of? Mia said as she photographed my bookshelf. That article I read about financial abuse in families. It's not just about money. It's about entitlement. Your mom genuinely believes she has more right to this place than you do. Because she raised you, I finished bitterly. Because I owe her. Because in her mind, everything I have is really hers on loan. Exactly. Mia lowered her phone. Riley, I know this is hard. But you need to prepare yourself for the possibility that this gets ugly. Really ugly. Your mom isn't going to accept no for an answer. I thought about the affidavit Mom had filed at the county office. The texts treating my apartment like it was already hers. The research into HOA rules and cohabitation rights. Mia was right. This wasn't about a housing crisis or my mother needing help. This was about control. About Mom deciding what I was allowed to have and taking whatever exceeded her sense of what I deserved. My phone rang. Mom's name on the screen. I let it go to voicemail. Then immediately another call. Then a text. We need to talk about this situation you're creating. You're being incredibly selfish and immature. Greg and I have already given notice on our rental. You're putting us in an impossible position. The entitlement was breathtaking. She'd decided to give notice on her rental before I'd agreed to anything. She'd created her own crisis and now wanted to make it my emergency. I blocked her number. Then I called Kyle. We needed to talk before Mom got to him with her version of events. And I needed to know if my little brother was going to be an ally or another obstacle in the fight that was clearly just beginning. Kyle agreed to meet me at a coffee shop in the Alberta Arts District, far enough from both our usual spots that we wouldn't run into anyone we knew. He showed up looking uncomfortable, his hands shoved deep in his jacket pockets. At 24, my brother still had that lanky college kid energy even though he'd graduated last year and was working as a graphic designer for a local agency. He ordered an Americano and sat across from me with the wary expression of someone who knew he was about to be caught in the middle of something he didn't want any part of. Mom says you won't even talk to her, he started. She's really upset, Riley. She thinks you don't care that she's about to be homeless. Did she tell you what she asked me to do? I kept my voice level. She said she needs a place to stay and you're being difficult about it. She asked me to sign over my apartment to her. Not rent it. Not stay temporarily. She wants me to give her the deed. Kyle blinked. Wait, what? She filed paperwork at the county office claiming she paid for part of my apartment and should be added as a co-owner. She's been researching how to establish residency. She and Greg gave notice on their rental before even asking me if this was okay. I pulled out my phone and showed him the screenshots of Mom's texts, the copies of the affidavit from the county office, the timeline Laura had helped me construct. His face went pale as he scrolled through it all. I didn't know about any of this, he said finally. She just told me you guys had a fight and you were being stubborn. She made it sound like she asked to crash on your couch for a few weeks, not like she was trying to take your place. That's because she knew how it would sound if she told you the truth. I leaned forward. Kyle, I need to know. Has she asked you to do anything? Help her move stuff? Go to my apartment when I'm not there? Lie about something? He shifted uncomfortably. She asked me to keep my spare key to your place. Said you were being paranoid about changing the locks and she might need to get in to water your plants or something if you were being unreasonable. I felt my jaw clench. I don't have any plants that need watering. She knows that. Kyle rubbed his face with both hands. This is so messed up. Why is she doing this? Because she's always done this, I said. The only difference is I'm finally saying no. And she can't handle it. I told him about the car she'd convinced me to co-sign for that tanked my credit when she stopped making payments. The emergency loans that were never paid back. The birthday she'd borrowed money for her own gift and then acted like I should be grateful she'd gotten me anything at all. Every story made Kyle's expression more troubled. He'd been away at school for most of it, insulated from the worst of Mom's financial manipulation. I knew she was kind of a mess with money, he said slowly. But I thought that was just her being disorganized. Not like deliberate. It's both. She's disorganized because she doesn't want to face consequences. And it's deliberate because she knows exactly what she's doing when she asks us for things. She just doesn't care about the cost to us. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. This is Greg. Your mother is devastated by how you're treating her. We're coming by your apartment tomorrow to discuss this like adults. You can't hide behind lawyers and changed locks forever. I showed Kyle the message. He swore under his breath. They're really going to try to force their way in. Not if building security stops them first. I'd already emailed my building manager about the situation, CCNG Laura on everything. But I need to know where you stand. Are you going to help them? Kyle was quiet for a long moment. Then he pulled out his key ring, removed the spare key to my apartment, and slid it across the table to me. I'm not helping them do this. It's wrong. What she's asking is completely wrong. The relief nearly knocked me over. I reached across and squeezed his hand. Thank you. But he looked miserable. She's going to lose it when she finds out I'm not on her side. She's going to say I betrayed her, that I'm choosing you over her. You're not choosing sides. You're choosing what's right. There's a difference. Maybe. He drained his coffee. But she won't see it that way. She never does. We sat in silence for a moment, two kids who'd grown up navigating the minefield of our mother's expectations and disappointments. Then Kyle asked the question I'd been dreading. Do you think she was always like this? Or did we just not see it? I thought about Grandma Ruth's note. Use this to build your foundation, not to fix someone else's cracks. She'd seen it. She'd known exactly what Mom was and had tried to protect me anyway. I think she was always like this, I said. We just kept making excuses for her because she's our mom. But being someone's parent doesn't give you the right to take whatever you want from them. That evening I met with Laura again at her office. She'd spent the afternoon pulling together a comprehensive legal strategy and her expression told me she'd found more problems. Your mother has been busy. Laura spread documents across her desk. She contacted your HOA claiming to be you and requesting information about the process for adding a family member to your deed. She also called your building manager and said she'd be staying with you for an extended period and needed a parking pass. I felt sick. How is she getting away with pretending to be me? Because she has your personal information. Social security number, date of birth, probably answers to security questions. Laura's expression was grim. This is bordering on identity fraud. And I found something else. She pulled up a document on her computer. Does your mother have any connection to your grandmother's estate attorney? The lawyer who handled the inheritance? No. Why? Because someone requested copies of your grandmother's will and the distribution paperwork from that firm last week. The request came from an email address that was very similar to yours but with one letter different. Easy to miss if you're not paying attention. My stomach dropped. She's trying to find loopholes. Ways to claim the inheritance wasn't legitimate or that I wasn't supposed to get all of it. Exactly. Laura printed the email thread. The law firm caught it and denied the request, but this shows sophisticated planning. Your mother isn't just acting on impulse. She's researching, strategizing, trying multiple angles of approach. She has help. Greg used to work in real estate before he got his license suspended for ethics violations. He knows how property law works. He's probably the one researching all of this. That tracks. Laura made notes. We need to go on offense. I'm filing for a restraining order based on the harassment, the fraudulent contact with your HOA and building, and the attempted impersonation. We're also going to send a formal cease and desist letter. And I want you to file a police report about the identity fraud attempts. The police report felt surreal. I sat in a gray interview room at the downtown precinct telling Detective Marcus Reed about my mother's attempts to steal my apartment through fraud and manipulation. He listened with the patient expression of someone who'd heard stranger family disputes but still found this one noteworthy. Your mother filed a false affidavit claiming financial contribution to your property, he confirmed, reviewing the documents I'd brought. She attempted to impersonate you via email to access legal documents. She contacted your building management with false claims about residency. And she's made statements suggesting she intends to occupy your apartment without your permission. That about covers it. I felt exhausted just listing it all. Detective Reed tapped his pen against his notepad. This is a complicated situation because it's family. But the law is clear. Fraud is fraud regardless of relationship. I'm going to open a case file. If she escalates, if she tries to enter your apartment or continues the impersonation attempts, you call me immediately. He handed me his card. People who feel entitled to other people's property can become dangerous when they realize legal channels won't work. Be careful. The warning stayed with me as Marcus picked me up from the station. He'd been quiet about the whole situation, supportive but clearly troubled by how far my mother was willing to go. In his car, he finally spoke. "I need to ask you something and I don't want you to get mad." I braced myself. "Okay. Are you sure you want to keep fighting this?" "I know that sounds bad," he said quickly. "But Riley, this is tearing you apart. Your mom is clearly unstable. Would it be easier to just let her have the place and start over somewhere else?" The question hit like a betrayal even though I knew he meant well. If I give in now, she wins. And she'll know that if she pushes hard enough, threatens enough, makes my life miserable enough, I'll cave. What does she ask for next? My car? My savings? Where does it stop? It doesn't, he admitted. You're right. I just hate watching you go through this. I hate that your own mother is doing this to you. We drove to my apartment in silence. When we pulled up, there was a car I didn't recognize parked in a visitor spot. My building manager, Tom Pearson, was standing near the entrance talking to two people I recognized immediately. Mom and Greg. Tom saw me and walked over quickly, his expression apologetic. "I was just telling them they need to leave the property. They showed up demanding to be let into your unit. Said they had a right to access it." "I don't know what they told you," I said, loud enough for Mom to hear, "but they have no rights to my apartment. They're not welcome here and they're not to be allowed in under any circumstances." Mom's face contorted with rage. "How dare you speak to me like that in public? I'm your mother. You're someone harassing me and trying to steal my property." I pulled out my phone. "If you're not gone in 60 seconds, I'm calling the police." Greg stepped forward, his jaw tight. "You're making a huge mistake, Riley. We're trying to help you, trying to keep this in the family. But if you want to go legal, we can go legal. We've got our own lawyer. And he says we've got a case for adverse possession if we can prove your grandmother intended that inheritance for your mother's benefit." Laura had warned me about this. Adverse possession required actually occupying the property for years, which they couldn't do. But the threat was meant to scare me. "Good luck with that," I said. "My grandmother's will was crystal clear. And every penny of that inheritance is documented. So take your fake legal threats and get off my property." Tom stepped between us. "Folks, I'm going to have to ask you to leave now. If you refuse, I'll be calling the police myself for trespassing." Mom looked like she wanted to argue, but Greg grabbed her arm and pulled her toward their car. As they left, she shouted back at me. "You're going to regret this. That apartment should be mine. When your grandmother dies, everything should have come to me. I raised you. That's my inheritance you stole." The words echoed across the parking lot. Several neighbors had come out to watch the confrontation. I felt my face burning with humiliation and rage. Tom touched my arm gently. "I'll be filing an incident report. And I'm updating building security. They won't get past the front desk again." I managed to thank him before heading up to my apartment, Marcus close behind me. Inside, I collapsed onto my couch and finally let myself cry. Not sad tears. Angry ones. Furious that my own mother had screamed accusations at me in front of my neighbors. Furious that I had to hire lawyers and file police reports and change locks because the woman who raised me felt entitled to take what I'd built. Marcus held me while I cried, not saying anything, just being there. When I finally calmed down, I checked my phone. 17 missed calls from Mom. 8 from Greg. A string of texts that devolved from angry to pleading to threatening. And one message from Kyle. "Mom called me crying saying you had her arrested. I know that's not true. Just wanted you to know I'm not falling for it. Stay strong." That message, more than anything, gave me the strength to keep fighting. My brother saw through the manipulation. He was standing with me. I wasn't alone in this. But I also knew this was far from over. Mom had shown her hand tonight. She was willing to make scenes, tell lies, threaten legal action. She'd research every possible angle and exploit every opening. This wasn't going to end until someone forced it to end. And that someone was going to have to be me. The restraining order hearing was scheduled for Thursday morning at the Multnomah County Courthouse. Laura had filed an emergency motion based on the parking lot confrontation, the fraudulent affidavit, and the pattern of harassment documented through texts and emails. I sat in the courtroom watching my mother take the stand, and for the first time in my life, I saw her performance clearly for what it was. She cried on cue, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue while explaining to Judge Patricia Morrison that she was just a concerned mother trying to help her ungrateful daughter. She'd only filed that paperwork at the county office because she genuinely believed she'd contributed money to the apartment purchase and wanted to make sure everything was properly documented. The texts were just her trying to communicate. The visit to my building was simply an attempt to resolve things face to face after I'd stopped answering her calls. Laura stood for cross-examination with the calm precision of someone who'd dealt with this exact type of manipulation before. Mrs. Matthews, you testified that you believed you contributed $75,000 toward your daughter's apartment. Can you provide any bank records, canceled checks, or wire transfer receipts showing this contribution? My mother hesitated. It was cash. Over time. I don't have records of every transaction. So no documentation whatsoever of this substantial sum? No, but it was my money. Money I'd saved from my mother's estate. From your mother? Not your late husband's mother? Mom's face flushed. My mother left me money when she passed. I gave some of it to Riley. Laura pulled out documents. According to the probate records we obtained, your mother's estate went entirely to your sister Patricia. You received nothing. My mother's mouth opened and closed. That's not. I mean, there were other assets. Judge Morrison leaned forward. Mrs. Matthews, did you or did you not give your daughter money for this apartment purchase? Because we have complete banking records showing the entire purchase amount came from Ruth Matthews's estate, transferred directly to your daughter's account. No funds came from you. The silence stretched out. Then Mom pivoted, her voice taking on that hurt tone that usually made everyone rush to comfort her. Maybe I didn't give her money directly, but I raised her. I sacrificed everything for her. That apartment exists because of me. Without me, she wouldn't even be here to inherit anything. So in a way, yes, that's my contribution. That apartment represents 30 years of my life. Laura didn't miss a beat. So you acknowledge you made a false statement in your affidavit to the county? That you didn't actually provide $75,000? I misspoke. It was a misunderstanding. And the email to your daughter's grandmother's estate attorney? The one using an address nearly identical to your daughter's, requesting confidential documents? Mom shot a venomous look at me. I was trying to verify information. Riley was being secretive. I had a right to know. You had a right to impersonate your daughter and request her private legal documents. That's identity fraud, Mrs. Matthews. Laura presented the email chain. This is a criminal act. Greg's lawyer, a nervous-looking man named Paul Hendricks who'd clearly realized his clients were indefensible, tried to object. Your Honor, my client is a mother concerned about her daughter's welfare and financial decisions. This is a family matter being blown out of proportion. Judge Morrison silenced him with a look. I've read the file, counselor. This is a clear pattern of harassment, fraud, and attempted theft. The fact that it's family makes it worse, not better. She turned to my mother. Mrs. Matthews, I'm granting the restraining order. You are to have no contact with your daughter. You may not come within 500 feet of her residence or workplace. Any violation will result in immediate arrest. But she's my daughter. Mom's voice rose to a near shriek. You can't keep me from my own child. I can and I am. Furthermore, I'm referring this case to the district attorney's office for potential criminal charges related to the fraudulent affidavit and identity fraud attempts. The courtroom erupted. Mom lunging toward me before the bailiff intercepted her, Greg shouting about judicial overreach, Paul Hendricks trying to calm everyone down. I sat frozen, watching my mother being physically restrained while she screamed that I'd ruined her life, that I was an ungrateful brat, that everything she'd done was for me. Laura's hand on my shoulder was steady and grounding. It's over. She can't touch you now. But it wasn't quite over. 2 weeks later, Kyle called me with news that shifted something fundamental. I went to Mom's storage unit to help her move some stuff. He sounded shaken. Riley, there were boxes and boxes of legal documents. Printouts about property law, tenant rights, ways to challenge wills. She's been planning this for months. Maybe longer. There was stuff in there about Grandma Ruth's will from before she even died. My blood ran cold. Before Grandma died? Yeah. I found a folder labeled Inheritance Research dated 2 years before Grandma Ruth passed. She was already planning how to get that money even when Grandma was still alive. There were notes about contesting the will, about claiming undue influence, about different legal strategies. Riley, I think she's done this before. I found documents about Aunt Patricia's house, about trying to claim she had rights to it. Laura had suspected something like this, but having confirmation was different. I met with her that afternoon and showed her what Kyle had found. This changes everything. Laura spread the documents across her desk. Your mother has a history of attempting to fraudulently claim family property. This isn't desperation. It's a pattern. A method. We can use this if she tries to appeal the restraining order or if the DA moves forward with charges. The district attorney did move forward. Monica Chen, a prosecutor who specialized in financial crimes, filed charges for filing a false instrument, attempted identity theft, and fraud. The trial was brief. With the documentation, the witness testimony from Kyle and Tom Pearson and even Janet Rodriguez, one of Mom's former friends who testified about similar schemes Mom had attempted with other people, the verdict was swift. Guilty on all counts. I sat in the courtroom watching my mother be sentenced to 18 months in county jail with 3 years probation. Greg, who'd been charged as an accomplice for his role in researching and planning the scheme, received a year and probation. As they led Mom away, she looked at me one final time. Not with the rage I'd expected, but with something that looked almost like confusion. Like she genuinely couldn't understand how her own daughter had allowed this to happen to her. Kyle met me outside the courthouse, his face drawn. You okay? I thought about that question. Was I okay? My mother was going to jail. My family was shattered. I'd spent months fighting legal battles and thousands in attorney fees. But my apartment was still mine. My boundaries were still intact. And I'd learned that sometimes love means saying no, even when it costs everything. I'm getting there. We walked to his car together. He'd moved into his own place finally, cutting financial ties with Mom that had been draining him for years. We were both learning how to build lives that didn't revolve around managing her chaos or absorbing her crises. 3 months later, Mia helped me host a housewarming party in the apartment I'd fought so hard to keep. Not because anything had changed about the space, but because I needed to fill it with people who actually cared about me. Friends who celebrated my successes instead of resenting them. Kyle brought his new girlfriend. Marcus made his famous enchiladas. Tom from building management stopped by with a bottle of wine and stories about the new security protocols he'd implemented. Standing in my living room surrounded by laughter and warmth, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Safe. Not just physically safe behind changed locks and legal protections, but emotionally safe. Free from the constant calculation of what I could afford to give, what I was obligated to sacrifice, what I owed simply for existing. Grandma Ruth's inheritance hadn't just bought me an apartment. It had bought me the foundation to finally say enough. To draw lines I should have drawn years ago. To learn that family isn't about obligation and debt. It's about respect and care and wanting good things for each other. My phone buzzed. A letter had arrived from the county jail. Mom's handwriting on the envelope. I looked at it for a long moment, then deleted the notification without reading it. Maybe someday I'd be ready to hear what she had to say. Maybe I'd even be able to forgive her for treating my life like community property she could claim whenever convenient. But not today. Today I was going to enjoy my home with people who loved me without conditions. Tomorrow I'd wake up in the apartment I'd renovated with my own hands, bought with an inheritance meant specifically for me, and defended against someone who should have been protecting it instead of trying to steal it. And that would be enough. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.